I do believe we're recording.
We're recording. Okay, I see it. All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy to report I figured out how to work Teams, so you don't have to wait 10 minutes for me to get that going. We will go ahead and begin the meeting. We have all commissioners here but Jim, so we'll bring him in when he's available. And the first item is general public comments. And I do see that I believe we do have several guests from the public. So if you wish to make a comment, please raise your hand. Press the little hand sign, and then I would see you and call on you.
And we can get some different results.
Copper is such a cool metal. Different oils or chemicals or substances change the color and the texture of the metal. The key will be like a cream color, but the backsplash top is a light blue.
Okay, one more round. Anyone from the public wishing to make a comment? If you can't figure out raising your hand, just start talking. Okay, we will move on then to approving the September 16th, 2022 minutes. Are there any changes or corrections needed to the minutes?
Yeah, Sandy, only that the minutes show me as present and I was not.
Oh, okay. Good catch. Did you get that, Tanya?
I did. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were able to. Got it. Any other commissioners with corrections? Oh, David. Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, then the September 16th meeting minutes are approved. We'll move on to chair and commissioner reports. Do any commissioners have items to report? Boy, this is a quiet bunch.
Well, I'll jump in for a minute here. As you know, we've got some openings on the commission. So far, we've gotten one application. So I know you all have been talking to other folks, but I would encourage you to encourage them to get their applications in.
Lincoln, for which position?
Well, we've got an applicant from San Juan. So that could either be for the San Juan District Commission or it could be for the at-large position.
Mm-hmm. I have a question about that, Lincoln. I think I've asked this once before, but for clarity, because the county process doesn't even start for another 2 weeks or more. I have a couple people that I've talked to, I've sent information to and answered questions for, and they both seem very interested on Lopez. Can we assume that there won't be any decisions made on applicants coming in now, that we'll wait for the county opening and whatnot? I know you might interview people, but they also know that the county process doesn't start till November 15th.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the decision is going to be made probably at that December 13th meeting.
Oh, okay.
So I have a correction on that. In talking to Christine Minnie, her understanding is that the application process is open, that they begin advertising 45 days prior to the expiration. The term expires the end of December, and she said they needed to collect applications through the end of December.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was her understanding.
That- That's,
Or
that sounds fine. I did have a conversation with Mike Thomas about this yesterday.
okay, well, there could be
but-
some confusion if he thinks differently. Just, I think the important thing is to let people know what is the deadline that you need to get your application in, and she thought it was end of December.
Yeah, I think it would be great if people got their applications in well before that, and better yet, were able to attend the December meeting.
Yeah, agreed.
Or even, next month's meeting, which might be a good one since we're going to talk about budget. And there's Christine now.
There's
Yeah, do you mind
Christine.
if I just add a bit there?
Yes, yes.
I think that the key here is not necessarily very specific dates. It's that it has to be 45 days advertised. So if to speak to what, I'm not sure what you spoke to Mike about, but if somehow we trigger or the advertising was triggered sooner on the county website, I could see how that would in effect make us able to interview or decide sooner. I'm sorry, Sandy. I'd never intended to make you look like you were saying anything wrong. You weren't. You were saying exactly what I said to you. But I think that the key here is the 45 days.
And that
Okay.
sounds good. My only question to Mike was whether he thought we were going to make or the council was going to make the appointments this year or or in January.
Yes, the
Okay.
problem being is that our last council meeting is December 14th.
Right.
So going forward for whenever another opening comes up, if what you're saying, Christine, is that we need 45 days notice, then it would really be great if we could advertise those openings in October and run the 45 days and have the middle of November to the middle of December to interview and whatever to facilitate getting onto the council meeting agenda either in December or first week in January. So I thought we had to run November 15th to December 31st, which makes you not able to assign anybody and a seat's open. It could be open for a while. So
I don't disagree. I think it sounds very reasonable. I only, in the course of this conversation, am relaying exactly what happens for every other committee. I'm not saying we can't step out of those bounds necessarily, but I always find there's backstops that I don't know about until I know about them. So we definitely, have the opportunity to see if that's reasonable and optional, but
if it would be, it would be a great option for all committees because all the terms expire at the end of the year. I'm not asking for the land bank exception. I'm thinking just as a practice for all committees, that would be a great revision.
I don't disagree.
Or clarification, maybe.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so will you let us know, Christine, when the county begins advertising and when the date, the deadline is for applications? We could.
I suspect what might be more important here is knowing what Mike had to say and what conversation Lincoln had.
Okay.
I'll circle back to you, Christine and Mike, and we'll get it figured out.
Okay.
Just great. So we can let applicants know. Okay. Any other chair and commissioner updates? I would just make two things. One is that I met with Jim, Mike Pickett, and Lincoln and Aaron for a financial committee kind of pre-planning prior to meeting with the budget committee. And we made, I thought, good progress there. So we're just on hold, waiting for that next meeting to get scheduled. Is that right?
Yeah, it has not been scheduled yet. Mylene has been out of town. She's back, but I'm expecting maybe the week of November 7th.
Okay. And then secondly, I think I was the only commissioner who could attend the North Shore Open House, and the reception, as you saw in the stewardship notes, was incredible and great planning efforts to both Land Bank staff and Preservation Trust staff. I thought it went off really well, good flow, and it was exciting to see the property now finally once we owned it. So I thought it was a good event. Okay, moving on to our partner update, and Vicki Edwards is here. I might suggest for future agendas, since we might not know if it's Angela or Vicki, that maybe we don't put the name there so that we don't mislead and think that someone else is going to be here, but it's indeed Vicki. So go ahead, Vicki.
Thank you, Commissioner Friel. Good morning, everyone. I have some really good news to share with you all, in that this week we acquired the Sugarloaf property that connects with Mount Grant. And this is due to the amazing generosity of many of the landowners as well as private donors. This property connects in with Mount Grant in the northwestern portion. It has very important overall connectivity values for protecting habitat and expanding that habitat conservation footprint on Mount Grant. The property is not going to be open to the public outside of the Preservation Trust having educational opportunities on the property and site visits. And we've been discussing the property for quite some time with Land Bank staff. And so we're really excited to share that news and looking forward to some of the educational opportunities that we foresee on that property. And so that's one of the great things that I have to share with you all. And then the second thing I just wanted to mention is, we're getting into the last quarter here of the year, and of course have many projects that we're working on to close. And one of those is with the Conservation Land Bank, and that's the Lopez Hill Preserve Edition conservation easement. And our conservation project manager, Kathleen Lewis, has been working diligently with Lincoln and his team to move that conservation easement forward so we can close on or before December 29th, I believe it is. Now we're still fundraising for that project, and we have a donor match opportunity that ends within the next week. So if anyone out there would like to contribute to that project and to really expand on your donation and double that, please do so and connect on our website to be able to do that. And just really want to thank the Land Bank Conservation team for all of their assistance on these projects, and knowing that the acquisition is just one component. The fee title acquisition is just one component of a much broader project. And that's the case with Lopez Hill, Katy Mountain, and of course also the North Shore Conservation Easement. And we just so appreciate all the staff that continue to assist us with our efforts to raise dollars so that we can give those dollars back to the land bank to be able to do other great conservation work. And just a shout out, of course, to Tanya and Amanda with the Lopez Hill project. And then, of course, Doug McCutcheon and Tanya with Katy Mountain, and all of Peter's help with the North Shore Conservation Easement. It's just invaluable having you all as partners, and just appreciate everything that we do with you. And that's the end of my update for this morning.
Great. Lots of positive news. What's the size of the Sugarloaf property? Sugarloaf?
It is a little over 48 acres.
Okay.
And just has some amazing intact habitat, rocky balds, and quite a bit of old growth veteran forest on the property, which, as you all know, is very unusual for San Juan Island, and our other islands as well, just because of all of the lime kiln production and the fuel that was needed to do that many years ago. And so to find a property that is as intact as this, and to work with such amazing conservation landowners. And this was 8 landowners when we're talking 4 partners with their spouses. So their commitment to protecting this special place is really phenomenal. We feel very fortunate to work with them.
That's great. It's so good to hear good news, good positive news.
Thank you. Yes.
Hopeful news. Thank you. Next up is the council update with Christine Minnie.
Morning again.
Morning.
My computer says that it's raining, but I look out the window and it's not. I suppose that'll happen sooner than later. And I am here to continue with the good news, which
Yay.
is sort of always my, the right way to begin a Friday, I guess. I'll start by talking about the Home Fund, which, as you know, has been generating money through the REIT only since 2019. I guess I have felt that it has been longer than that, but it has only been since 2019. And since then, it has generated over $10 million in revenue. That's amazing. And there have been many expenditures to date. Obviously, most of those is in the project realm, and that's nearly $5 million. There is nearly $2 million still in commitments for projects that haven't got off the ground exactly, as well as about $5,000 for consultation services and nearly $100,000 for administrative costs. This last week, however, council was able to allocate an additional $3,514,290 to projects currently underway across the three major islands, and the recipients include Housing Lopez, Lopez Community Land Trust, Opal Community Home Trust, and the San Juan Community Home Trust. It's pretty great. San Juan County and the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee have released a second request for proposals in 2022. This is San Juan County established this tourism facilities program funded by a portion of revenue collected under the state lodging tax excise statutes. And it is, we are currently seeking proposals. And, there are many factors and requirements to put in a proposal, but I encourage anybody who might think that they have something that they'd like to do in their own realm to visit the county website and check out what those are. I often think that the sentiment behind projects, or just I think that the whole sense of LTAC sometimes feels very tourism centric or tourism benefited, but I really believe at the end of the day that the community benefits so much from most all of the projects that I've seen come through that in receiving LTAC funds. Last week, council gathered at the Senior Center on Orcas Island. That was a first for me in person. Lincoln was there. Brian was there. I'd say that there are maybe about 15 people all in all that showed up. I think that it was a good experience for us to be there. Council will meet next month on Lopez on November 6th That'll also be my first time meeting on Lopez. But more importantly, Jamie's last time meeting on Lopez. So I encourage anybody on Lopez or who wants to go to Lopez to attend the November 6th council meeting.
Quick correction. I think it's December 6th.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm in a time warp. Lincoln, thank you.
Yeah.
Guess what, guys? It's November 6th. Guess what else? I told Park Board yesterday, November. It's December. Oh, okay. Well, we're going to fix that somehow.
Sorry, I'll be there.
Yeah, good. Public Works recently completed a county road realignment project at Haida Point, which I suspect you are all very familiar with, on Orcas Island. The county developed this project in pursuit of a managed retreat philosophy, whereby our essential transportation infrastructure is relocated to minimize our impact on the natural environment, but to also keep us from, driving off into the ocean. San Juan County will receive $1 million from a state-based historic courthouse grant program. It's meant to facilitate the rehabilitation and preservation of historic courthouses. I do know, based on what I've learned this far, that $1 million is a small fraction of what we as a county need to invest into our courthouse to make it safe and functional. I never thought I would be in a world where $1 million is it only a small part of what is required to make something whole. I think I will end by saying that the council, after many years at this point of staff and volunteer time, is really hitting home the finalizing of the comprehensive plan update. And hopefully will be adopted by the end of the year. I think that would be a great gift to Jamie and everybody involved. So that's it for me today.
Well, that's a lot.
It was a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
December
Right.
6th. December 6th.
Any questions for Christine about her update, or other questions related to land bank and council?
Yeah, I just recalled last month. Who knows? It actually is probably 4 months ago. But Mike did ask about the geologic survey that is happening on in the county. And the information that I have to respond to that at this point is that it's on track and is supposed to be finished in the course of next year. That's literally all the information that I have for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Christine. So we will have our third quarter financial report with Aaron. Is Aaron able to use someone else's computer?
I'm here. I was able to eventually get on. So.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, just trying to get everything together right now. Should be good. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so what we're going to look at here today is the third quarter combined financial statements for the Conservation Area Fund and the Stewardship Management Fund. Both of these are...
Aaron, just to interrupt, I'm not sure everybody can see that. Is everyone...
Right.
Do we need to make that bigger?
As big as possible.
Yeah.
That's getting better.
This isn't an easy one to, let's see.
That looks good.
Yeah.
All right, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're going to start off by looking at the combined financial statement for the Conservation Area Fund. The budgets set up here in this statement are reflecting of the Second Amendment budget, which was approved by the council on September 13th. We did not have a commission approval of a expenditure and acquisition plan during that time because we did not make any adjustments. I just wanted to note that these numbers are in line with the county's second budget amendment. So let's start off with cash in the Conservation Area Fund. That increased by $360,000 in the third quarter, bringing total cash, where are we? Yeah, total cash to just over 5 million, 5.1. The interest rate for the local government investment pool, LGIP, last year in June, we were sitting at a measly 0.2%. I think everybody is probably aware of the Fed's interest rate hikes over the last couple months here, and we're now sitting at 2.25%. That, yeah, big jump there. Other than that, we will move down to revenue and expenditures. First off, I will note REIT, we have broken 4 million for the year at the end of June, or sorry, at the end of September, just over 4 million. We did set the budget at 4 million, so we're at 101% of that. As it sits right now, I think we're doing pretty well here in October. I think we're at just over 4.25. So I think this was a good conservative number, and not knowing how the rest of the year will shake up, it's good to see that we did break our budgeted number. Donations from private sources. I just wanted to note that the budget now reflects the donated or San Juan Preservation Trust cash at closing for the North Shore property of 1.5 million. This is recorded as a donation at this point, although it does not reflect in the cash balance. Since this money was brought to table, all it does is balance against the budget and how much we budgeted for that acquisition. So it's just to keep everything in line, but that 1.5 million does not go towards the cash balance. Third quarter transfer to stewardship was made in August at $512,256. That is in line with the approved budget for that quarter. Acquisition costs. In August, we did make the first payment and closing for the Hauschka Katy Mountain property. This is a project that is spread over 4 years, $200,000 a year at 5% interest. So that reflects just the Katy Mountain property, not the other property, Prohaska, at this time. Administrative expenses are 3.13% of total revenue. So admin is again, at this point in the year, sitting very good below the 10% threshold. And that is everything for the Conservation Area Fund. I'll move on to stewardship and management. Cash for...
Before we do that, Aaron, are there any questions on Conservation Area Fund? Very good.
Okay. So moving on to the Stewardship Management Fund, combined financial statement. Cash and Stewardship Management Fund has increased by 113,000 over the second quarter in 2022, bringing total cash to 4.2 million. Down to revenue and expenditures. Again, just as note, for revenue, we did have the transfer in for site enhancement. The plant sale went very well. We just closed that up, but that will reflect in the fourth quarter as an October number. That was done very well by the team. Everyone did a great job. And expenditures, the thing, what I'd really like to point out here is our overall expenses for property management maintenance and site enhancement. These are the expenses that are set up with projects that all the stewardship staff works really hard on to get done on a yearly basis. Team worked really hard developing the budget and having set projects. Given some contracting issues and getting some of these projects done, property management and maintenance is sitting at 32% of budget, and site enhancement is set at 23%. Those are just numbers to keep in mind when we discuss the Third Amendment and the first touch on the 2023 budget next month. Since we did not spend what we were intending to spend here in 2022. So other than that, that's all I have. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Okay, if there's nothing, I will stop recording or stop presenting. All right.
Thank you, Aaron.
I have a quick question, Sandy.
Yes.
Related to the previous discussion under commissioner report. In terms of the meeting, the budget meeting with county and land bank and whatever, that's related to, I would presume, the talk about stewardship, adequate stewardship funds. So will that discussion have some conclusion before we look at next year's budget so that we can incorporate whatever changes are agreed upon versus having it come in after we approve the budget or recommend the budget?
Yes, that's the goal. The goal is that we would be meeting with the budget committee anytime now, right? Lincoln, we're just waiting to hear from them. So yes, that, and then we would probably also, if there's any changes, bring that back to the commission to discuss and update.
Be part of our budget discussion next month.
Yeah.
And then my follow-up to that is just a refresher for me. What is the timeline on the budgeting process? We have to approve it, then what will be the dates for the public hearing I think we have to have, and before we get it?
So
we're going, sorry, Sandy, we're gonna do the public hearing at next month's meeting. So this will be to consider the 2023 budget. And that will be it. We're just doing a one and done here, which is not too bad considering we've already kind of been through the 2023 budget before. We do have some changes, but it's not like this is starting from scratch. But
Right.
that's the plan. Mm-hmm. It's possible that we could push final approval back to December. I do think if we do that, it's likely the council will be making their final budget approval on the 13th or 14th, which is prior to the commission meeting schedule.
Because we're on the second, this will be the second year of a 2-year budget. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, I just thought we were kind of 1 month late right now, but one and done. That sounds good.
So you'll have so for November meeting, we'll have a draft budget, and it does feel like we're a month behind then, right? Because usually
You know
we
what?
would review a draft and then the following month we would approve the draft, approve it after the public hearing.
That's what we do ordinarily. We are a month behind, you're right.
Okay. All right. All right, we'll go into director's report, Lincoln.
I don't have a whole lot to report. Nothing's really happening on the acquisition front. We are moving to convey the conservation easement on the Lopez Hill addition to the Preservation Trust. As Vicki talked about, there's no update really on the Prohaska Road acquisition. That I'm not quite sure. I still need to catch up with the attorney about where that lawsuit sits between the county and Public Works and the Hauschkas, or rather Public Works, the Hauschkas, and the people who filed the suit. So no updates there. I have been spending a lot of time on this Recreation, Open Space, and Stewardship Plan, formerly known as the Parks, Trails, Natural Areas Plan. We did have a couple of public meetings last week, which were not optimal. I think the meetings went fine. It was just that the attendance was off, and that was a fact that really was attributed to the fact that our advertising, it was not adequate, quite honestly. And we were looking at doing a truncated public participation effort on this than what we would normally do, mostly because first of all, we usually have a survey that's done as part of this, and we've done a number of surveys over the past few years, beginning in 2017, and then in 2019, or 2018, 2019. Also, a lot of this ground has been covered as part of the Sustainable Tourism Master Plan, which did have a big outreach effort. And so we kind of felt like we'd gotten a lot of relevant feedback for this as well. And so it was just a kind of a trying to get this thing done. And we also were confronted with a deadline, which I don't think we realized that we had, in particular to one grant category. And we needed to get this thing in front of the council and approved by the first part of November. So it all kind of came tumbling down together. In any case, I think the plan is looking pretty good. We're doing our final edits on it. So we should have that out and available to the public probably a week ahead of when the council is going to look at it. So that'll be right around the beginning of November. So that's about all I have going on.
Will that, will you send that out to commissioners as well? I noticed in there it says, thank you to the commissioners for their participation, but we haven't seen it either. I understand it's out for public comment, but
Yeah, totally agree. That you have to remember a lot of this too is kind of cut and paste from last time. If there aren't any changes, you're going to see the same pages in various parts of the report, and that attribution page right at the beginning is the same, where we basically changed the names from 2016, which is the last time we went through this.
okay, so I get the sense that this is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, we'll get it to you. We'll get it to you as soon as we've got pretty much final draft for you to look at.
Yeah, Lincoln or maybe Christine, what's the plan for council approval? Is it the normal public hearing and 2 touches for that?
It's not, since this isn't really a resolution or anything, it's just a voice vote approval of the plan. The idea is that they will have it a week ahead of time, and they'll consider it at that meeting on Monday, the 7th, and then make a decision about what to do, either approve it or send it back for us to keep working on.
I'm glad Lincoln knew because I did not. It's my first go.
Yeah. Is this part of the comp plan or is it separate?
No, it's separate. Last time around, it included the non-motorized transportation plan, which is part of the comp plan. This time that's been pulled out again. So that's going back in the comp plan, and I think that is one of the confusing elements of the plan this time around, that anything to do with rights of way where we're not talking about a separated trail, where instead we're talking about maybe bike lanes or widened shoulders, is not being considered as part of this plan. It's going to be considered mostly as part of the transportation improvement plan, which is a public works process. So we will be making note of that in this plan so people have an understanding of how to participate in those decisions as they're made about what's happening with the roads and non-motorized transportation. But yeah.
I would just like to say that I was, excuse me, I was very pleased with the emphasis on trails and connectivity in the plan. A little bit confusing because some of it, the off-road trails and cross-country trails are, I guess, going to be primarily the responsibility of Land Bank, and the bike lanes and on-road trails are the responsibility of Public Works. And I don't know if never the twain shall meet, or it's going to be interesting coordinating. And my other comment was, I was surprised and a little disappointed to see no real focus on climate change and resilience in the plan.
That is part of the revisions that we're making. So we did get some comments back, I think about 25 comments on the plan. A number of them focused on how we need to address the issue of Coast Salish participation in all of this. But the climate change piece is definitely something that we're pushing on right now to get into the plan in some form or other. Again, I will just make the point that the primary goal here, since as we go forward and these departments do make decisions and the Land Bank Commission makes decisions, this is not necessarily a great roadmap. It does keep us eligible, though, for a number of state grants, which is the primary purpose here, that we have to have this thing done.
So I'm getting that this plan is more of a formality and not something that we can use to guide decision making.
You know, it could be very helpful in that one of the recommendations we are going to make is to put together some kind of trails master plan for the county. So that will be helpful for us to participate in and contribute to. So there will be some other efforts, I think, coming out of this that could be quite helpful as we go forward and want to make decisions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Lincoln? Any other questions?
I'm not sure I can articulate this exactly what I'm thinking, but so I'm starting to get a little buzz about this document, I think, was referenced, or we reference it somewhere in terms of what we use for assessing or maybe prioritizing properties. I just somehow remember it came up with, I think, with the North Shore and some reference to, did you follow this plan? So we're revising it now, and I guess, do you feel like it's actually a functional plan, or is there anything in that plan that will come back to conflict, I guess, with land bank decision making? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
it's
Can we
making
use the plan to support our decisions, or are we going off on two different?
Yeah, I'm not expecting it to be tailor made to support everything we do, but it's kind of being done for a number of reasons. But I just want to make sure that one of the reasons is something that we can use as a reference, that this document is something we use to help in our decision making, and that we want to be able to do that, and everything that's in there, for the most part, we feel that we'll be able to say that. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some good information for us to use. Part of the good thing about this plan is that it's going to incorporate the results from those surveys, which had been done, into an actual plan format, as opposed to just having them floating out there. And it also wraps in the Sustainable Tourism Management Plan outreach efforts and the results we have from that. And that plan too will be coming out and will be consistent with this. So I think we'll have a number of documents which help us moving forward. They're not going to be terribly specific, but we do have some very clear direction from county residents and also people who visit the county about wanting to see a lot more in the way of trails, about being strongly in favor of more land acquisition and different types of land acquisition. And in the sustainable tourism, public outreach stuff, they've incorporated a number of goals in that plan, which I think will be helpful to us as well. So it's not, it doesn't give you any terribly specific things. It doesn't pinpoint properties that you should be going after, but does tell you the general tenor of the discussion among the public, and does give us a good evidence that a lot of the things we're doing are well supported.
That's great. Yeah, I'd rather not pinpoint anything, but looking for general philosophical support, whatever. I think that's okay. Thank you.
All right. Since we're way ahead of schedule, I think let's just push forward, not do the break right now. And are we up for that? Let's see, 9:50. Actually, let's take a little break. Change my mind. Let's take a 10-minute or 8-minute break and come back at 9:30 and then focus on these action items with the stewardship, under stewardship. So see you at 9:30.
Mike, you look like you just flew in from Scotland.
It doesn't look like a California golf day, but it does look a little bit like a Scottish golf day out there. We just get the wind going at about 30 miles an hour. It'd be perfect. You might remember this too.
Oh, yeah.
You're a little
That's
younger,
not-
but
That's not Scotland.
It's 9:30, just waiting for there. Okay, meeting back in session. We are under the topic stewardship report and have a few action items. So are you leading this?
Are we recording?
Recording has started, yes. Recording. I think we recorded the whole break.
Yes, I'll take the lead on that. The first one here, the cough help plan. Since Charlie is still in Hawaii collecting yellow jackets, I don't think he's going to be available. So we're just getting toward the end of this process here. I think everyone's had an opportunity to review it, and our next step is really to just get it in front of the PA's office for their sign off. And then we'll come back with a final draft or produce a final draft of it, which is what will basically go to council for approval. Unless you all are thinking that we need more.
Well, is this our opportunity to, so we've all had an opportunity to review it and submit our comments in writing. I admit I haven't had a chance to review this new version, but there's something jumping out at me on the first page, but I want to see what other commissioners have to say. Okay, I'll start talking. So on page 1, item 2, term and options to renew. First sentence, lease term commence on the date of lease signed by both the land bank and the lessee and shall terminate on December 31st, 2028. So if this were to go into effect in 2023, then that would make this be a 6-year term, and it's supposed to be a 5-year term. Am I counting that right? 23, 24, 5, 6, 27, 28. And that was one of my comments when I received the draft last time, and I understood, oh, that correction will be made. So having seen that that correction hasn't been made, I'm wondering if this is an older version that hasn't incorporated some of our corrections.
Can you do the math for me again, Sandy? Because if it starts January 1st of 2023.
So that, okay, I'm counting on my fingers. So
oh yeah,
when
yeah, I get you. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to admit, I believed this was the draft that had incorporated comments, but we've had a little bit of confusion with Charlie's absence. Peter?
Thanks. Yeah, Sandy, I am looking at a version that has that correction made. And it's a Word version. It's the version that went to the LUMs in an email from Charlie. So yeah, I can't explain why that PDF doesn't show that, but I see clearly in a Word version 2027, and I see the change from 2028. And I looked through both of them to see if the changes were consistent, and I do see the other changes, and I missed that one as being an inconsistency, but think that you are looking largely at the last version, although yeah, I was a little confused myself as to whether the version that went out was the final one or not, or the latest one.
Peter, I had a question. It's pretty minor, but it's clearly written that the LUMs will be responsible for the operation of the farm, any farming activities, and the land bank is responsible for the basic infrastructure, existing infrastructure. And there's on page 4, and this is not a concern about cost, just about clarity for keeping those two distinct, is in that first paragraph, it's highlighted in green, which I'm not sure what that means, but the land bank responsible for the field office and the community mobile slaughter site electric service costs. So I was just curious if that's a function of just how those two buildings are wired, or if there was another reason for kind of crossing over and the land bank being responsible for some of the farm operation cost.
We've made, as you know, the whole property is being rewired. We've made every effort to separate the land bank activities from all the other farm activities, and we were able to do that everywhere really except for the field office, because it's hard to justify a whole another meter for that. But the mobile slaughter site is clearly something the land bank is covering. So we are splitting out our portion of the field office electrical cost, which is pretty minor, and paying the mobile slaughter site in full. Does that answer the question?
Well, I was just curious about the reason for, I don't think, I think the cost is gonna be nominal. It's a pretty small cost for both, but I'm just curious why the land bank was covering the cost of the slaughterhouse site.
Okay, this mobile slaughter site is open to the public. It's open to a consortium of users, I guess, and it's a public service the land bank is providing, along with access to that piece of the property. So while that area is technically accessible to the lessee and part of the lease area, it's also accessible to the public, anyone who's part of that service. And so we provide water to that site, and we provide power, and we provide the land for its use. And a mobile van shows up and plugs in and uses that system.
Okay, thanks.
Brian?
Yeah, Sandy, I thought that this was the comment that you were going to make. It's also on page 1, under number 2, the term and options to review, and it's somebody else's comment that I think wasn't answered. About halfway down the page, it says at the end of the initial 5-year term, a renewal of the lease shall be in writing in the form of a deed and recorded by the land bank. And somebody commented, is this accurate? That is the word deed. And I wondered the same thing.
Brian, that was my comment to Charlie.
Is that again a previous draft that's been changed?
Sorry, I'm toggling between two.
Yeah, I haven't been aware of a lease being recorded as a deed either.
Let's see. Sorry, Brian, can you help me find
Yeah.
that? Okay, here we go. Page 2.
Page 1 on mine, Peter.
No. Page, what page, sorry?
Page 1, number 2. The heading is.
Okay, yeah, let me look at the other version, sorry.
Yeah, it's the other version still has it as in the form of a deed, which does not seem correct to me either. So that's something that needs to be flagged going to legal review. I don't understand why it wouldn't just be lease extension.
Is it possible that the prior lease says this as well? Didn't this get cut in the prior lease?
That's possible. I asked Charlie to go back to the previous, standard lease agreement and favor language that was in that when we had questions, but I'm not certain, in this case, whether he changed that or not.
So I'm feeling like there's some loose ends here, not really sure what the lease looks like that actually went to the LUMS and the version that's going to legal review. Can you get us a copy that doesn't have all the comments on the side, maybe, so we can send us what you've sent to the LUMS and what's going, so that we can kind of check and see if our comments and concerns have been addressed, or I just feel like maybe something has gotten dropped. Maybe it hasn't, but I'd feel better looking to see what version is going around for final approval.
Lincoln, you want to comment on that? I think, yeah, we can get get this to you, but Lincoln.
Yeah, so I'm just forwarded you an email which has both of those versions. It's got the one that the PDF one and the Word one. The Word one is what has gone to the LUMS. So you can see that, you can take a look at that. I don't think you need to do it right in real time at this meeting, but you can see the changes that were made there.
So I guess what I'm saying is this says action item, Caulfield lease draft approval for lease for review. So if the version that we received in the email to review prior to the meeting isn't the version, then it feels to me like we're not ready to take action on approving the lease.
Well, I guess my suggestion would be, let's just hold off on that. We should forward it for legal review anyway. I don't think that's going to be an issue, because I don't think we're really talking about too much that's substantive, and we need to get them on this, basically, if we're going to have any hope of getting it done by the end of the year.
Could you, so there was a lease committee, right? So there was Brian and David. Could Brian and David look at this just before? The reason I say is if it goes to the attorney, but then some things have been missed and then we change it and it needs to go back, it would just be good to get another couple of sets of eyes on it before it goes, but kind of right away, it sounds like.
Sandy, I've read through it, and aside from the comment that I just made or that somebody else made, it looks fine to me. It would be good, I suppose, to know if there were any legal changes after legal review, but other than that, I'm okay with it. I guess I would like to have confirmation from staff that everything was fine with the LUMS as well, or from the LUMS themselves.
Although I didn't hear anything directly from the LUMS following Charlie's message, I think I would have heard if there was an issue. And they've had it for a while now. And Sandy, with regard to the dates, I mean, by my count here, if it starts in 2023, so you count 2020, count that year, so 2024, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know. It's it's a little confusing, but I think that was correct. But anyway, it does say 2028.
It adds up to 6 years. If
Yeah.
you do it.
Yeah, and the Word document does correct that. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I guess I would feel, since it's coming, we're not making final approval, we're approving to send it to legal. And it sounds like the review that I did looking for the changes that I had talked to Charlie about, some of them he said they wouldn't happen, which was fine. I'm comfortable sending the version that went to the LUMS with the correct date to at least let legal have a look at it. I can't believe that it'll come back with any huge substantive change from any other, omission between these two versions. I think if they're going to come back with anything, it's going to be something different than some of the stuff I think maybe we're asking. So to keep the process going, I would suggest we vote to approve it to keep going to legal. And I think I was on that lease team too, and I'm happy to look at both versions this morning and just double check that. But
So are you looking for an approval of something or just let it go through the process? What's our action item or what is being asked?
I don't know that there is an official action item. I think it's just a consensus that we can send it on to legal and get their review. And once we have it back from them and we're confirmed that the LUMS are okay with it, we'll float it back by you one last time for final, and then hopefully at the next meeting, and then we'll have the council sign off on it so we can get it into place.
Mhm.
I'd agree with that.
I agree with that.
I agree. Mike,
I, I agree too, although I think it would be great to know how we got the deed part in there.
Mhm.
Because nobody knows anything about that, and we're going to legal with document that we say we're gonna, you know, at the end of 5 years, we're gonna record it. And we don't know why we're saying that. If it was in the prior one agreement, if it was in the prior agreement, then we should be asking legal, why do we want to do this? I just think it'd be good to know how that got in there, what it means, because I've never seen any lease that gets recorded as a part of the deed, but there may be some terms in here that make it such. That's what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I suggest we just call that out and to legal's attention. Highlight it.
I like the idea of seeing if they see it first. That's what we're paying them for. But you know, whichever.
yeah. No, it doesn't sound right. So, and it looks like it is in the version that went to the LUMS and I guess would be forwarded on. Brian, is your hand raised for a new something, or is that from?
No, it's not.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Action. Final Turtleback Stewardship Management Plan consideration for approval. Someone want to give us a?
Is it a coincidence that we lost Peter? Oh, there he is.
Okay,
Just
Peter,
stepped out of the room for a minute.
anything you want?
I guess I'd just be happy to recap that we, went through, received public comments, responded to those both in a summary that we provided to the commission, and we also followed up with the individuals who commented. And have not heard any further comments in response to our messages. And I believe we weren't able to do what everyone asked, but we certainly explored the possibilities and took things a step further. Aaron Halcomb consulted with Department of Fish and Wildlife regarding the hunting questions, and we have a meeting set up on site to meet staff out there, WW staff, to look at that. But again, we weren't proposing to start hunting. We were just proposing to include the property, among others, where we would consider that at some point with an additional public process. And then there were questions about trails, both changes to trails and requests for additional trails, mountain biking trails specifically. And in the case of the concerns about proposed changes to trails, we invited the Washington Trail Association regional person out here, spent a day on the mountain. He looked at what we had proposed. He agreed very strongly with the proposals and also agreed to assist with additional design work out there. He was involved. His name's Arlen Bogards, and he was involved in Turtle Head trail planning, and so was familiar with the mountain and has many years of experience in the region and in building and maintaining good trails. So we're going to get him under contract shortly to provide some consultation on that, and potentially to actually provide some volunteers when implementation time comes. And then with regard to the mountain biking, it was really well, I was going to say mainly, but partly that our abilities to manage more trails are limited. We have limited staff. There was a proposal to build a new single track mountain bike trail on the north side. Parking is a major constraining factor there. If Turtleback were to become a mountain biking destination, they could fill the parking lot every day like they do, at Moran when they can. So it just seemed incompatible with our abilities and the space. We already have severe parking problems on the mountain. So, and then there's the disturbance of habitat that comes along with it. And so we're not anti-mountain biking by any means. It's just maybe not the right place or time. So. Aaron, anything to add?
Not the mic.
Oh, there she is.
No, I think this is, I think you did a great summary, and I think this is a really solid plan. We've been working on it for a while, and it has some strong ecological focus and is still accommodating low impact recreation. So I think it's great, and we're hoping for your approval so we can wrap it up.
Brian?
I just want to say that I had a conversation with Peter about this last night, and I thought both the public comments and the staff's response to them were great. A lot of these are tough issues. The mountain biking issue, which I'd like to see accommodated to whatever extent we could, and the hunting issue. There's no right answer, and some of these issues are evolving, so the plan seems kind of interim to me. The other one, of course, is the connection to Haida Point, or at least to Deer Harbor Road, which we all agreed when we went out there that is not a good idea to do right now. So I was satisfied with the staff's response to the comments. I hope the public is satisfied with that too. I understand from Peter that nobody attended last month's commission meeting and there wasn't too much discussion among commissioners about it. But again, I hope that the public understands our position and responses to it. I thought that the staff did a very good job and made the best decisions that could be made at this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I'll just say that, I mean, in some ways, all of these management plans are interim. 10 years, before the next revision is nothing. And I think this plan sets the stage for a lot of overdue infrastructure improvements, road drainage in particular. We have perhaps 27 culverts to replace up there in order to prepare the streams and for the hydrology that's coming now. Really, it's already here, and in addition to trail improvements, I think it's and setting the stage for a lot of forestry stewardship. I think it's where we need to be now. It's like there's some questions, Miles.
Miles?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for your work on this, Peter. I think it's a really solid plan, and I really appreciate how you took into consideration people's comments and responded to them. I thought it was really thoughtful and well done. I just have two questions just for my own clarification, really. There's the trail, the addition trail that this is on figure 6 on page 26. And so there's a trail that's being decommissioned and then an improvement on a trail and a new trail connecting the improved trail and the existing one. It shows as the yellow in the top right corner there. And it sounds like the new trail is gonna not have, no dogs will be allowed on that new trail. And I'm just curious if that means that that whole section, because in order to get from, that new trail is a connector between two larger trail systems. So I'm just curious if that means that that whole section is gonna be closed to dogs, or you're just gonna have one section on that yellow section, just for my own clarification here.
You're muted, Peter.
Sorry about that. Although I'm not looking at the map, the new trail, which goes down the south slope into the recent acquisition, that is the only dog-free area. The Morning Ridge Trail continues to be dogs on leash. So there's no, I don't think there's any disconnection or incompatibility there, but maybe I'm missing something.
No, I
Okay.
think, yeah, clarification that new in the upper corner is a reroute.
Oh, yeah. sorry. Yeah.
So that's not, dogs are permitted on that, but the brand new trail that goes south will not have dogs. So,
Oh, I see. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
yeah,
That was
thanks
what I was
for
looking for. Yeah.
catching that. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question is again, just for my own clarification here on page 29 with the table that has the cost projection for general operations and capital projects. I'm just curious in general, how much of those funds that are listed are what you would expect to contract out, and that's what will be paid out to contractors outside of the land bank, or is that considering, you know, land bank staff time? I'm just curious, like what the vision is of that, of those amounts that are listed under general operations and capital projects.
In my view, that's mainly contracted services.
Okay. And is that included for like in the, when it goes through 2026 to 2031 for general operations, those are also contracted services?
Yeah, it's just continued forestry work, and for the most part, we've got, you know, potentially decades of forestry work to do up there. So
sure. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Krista?
Really just, well, I had one question, which is kind of small, and otherwise I just loved reading this. Again, these plans are fantastic, and there's just so much information in here, and it just shows just the professionalism of all you guys. So really happy to be associated with that. And then on page 23, there's a comment on following approaches for managing levels of use. No recreational promotion of the preserve. Does that mean, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, I think we've struggled with parking, with accommodating everyone, and I think Turtleback is well known, and it appears on many websites, including real estate websites, and I think that I just want to discourage additional promotion, basically.
Sure.
Not for us to not promote it, and
Yeah.
hopefully to work with our partners at the Preservation Trust to limit promotion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was, you know, now since I did work for the chamber here on Lopez, we had, and, you know, working with Land Bank and BLM, and we made kind of informal understandings of certain things not being put on our annual map for a while, and just to allow preserves to either evolve. Like even still, I don't think the Channel Preserve shows up on that map yet. But Turtleback and Turtlehead are kind of out of the barn already. It would be hard to roll most of that back, but you never know. You could talk to the chamber. I don't know what Orcas does on their map, but it could be forgotten for a year or so just to let the preserve rest. That's what I'm saying. I would have a conversation with whoever's there if it's still Lance. But anyway, I appreciate the report. Loved it.
Thank you.
All right, any other comment? Brian, is your hand up for a second time or? No, okay. All right, so if no other comments about that, I would entertain a motion to approve this plan.
I so move.
No, I'm entertaining it. I need someone to make it.
Oh. I move that we adopt as final this Turtleback Mountain Preserve Stewardship and Management Plan dated September 2022.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right. Done. Happy Friday, Aaron. All right. So lastly is public comments and draft responses for Watmow Addition Interim Management Plan. Lincoln or somebody want to just, oh, Amanda's coming on. There she is. Anything you want to point out to us?
Yeah, in the meeting materials, you received a summary table of the comments. We received 13 comments, and they're organized by category, as you can see, with some draft responses. I'd say overall the feedback was good. And Aaron and I are discussing some minor edits, mainly like small additions and clarifications, but no major changes based on the comments that we received. So, any questions?
Everyone okay with the staff responses, proposed responses? Yeah.
Yep, Brian.
I'm fine with the good comments and questions and good responses again. I have a question, and I guess mostly for Lincoln. I'm still, let's see, how do I say this? I guess the question is, what are we looking at for our future with regard to the decision on keeping or reselling the property? I'm a little bit confused, and I wonder whether the public is clear about the consequences of accepting the salmon grant and why that would devalue the property in terms of conveying it. Did I say that so it makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So where we are with both the salmon grant and the ALEA grant, Aquatic Lands Enhancement Account grant, is really in a wait and see mode. So we don't have any plans to accept the salmon funding, which has gotten final approval, I'm pretty sure, right, Aaron? And the ALEA one, I'm quite confident will be approved, but that's not going to happen until the legislature gets through their budget. So we're talking about, April, May, or something like that next year. In the meantime, we've been waiting for the record of decision from BLM just to see how they've responded to public comment and adapted that plan. I was hoping we would have that by now. The latest word I have is maybe by the end of the year. So we're just kind of wanting to see what that looks like. And based on that, there will be a reaction from the public to what's being proposed. And that'll give us a clearer indication of what we want to do. It's not going to be feasible for us to accept those grants and then convey the property to BLM. That's just not really workable from a financial standpoint. Either we accept the grants and take on managing the property, or we reject the grants and hope that BLM purchases it. That's a decision that will have to be made next spring, probably, or early summer. So, and it won't be an easy one, quite honestly, because even if the The record of decision and management plan are amenable to everyone. There's going to be no guarantee that BLM will actually make that purchase. So we'll be forfeiting, 1.5 million in definite funds for the potential to be paid back for the property in its entirety. So basically, we would get another million or more if we were paid for it in its entirety by BLM. But we'll have to come back and think about that, once we know that we want to confirm that the ALEA grant is actually real, and we'll want to see people's reaction to the record of decision.
Do we have a deadline on accepting the grants or not?
We'll have to look at that. I'm not sure. The critical one here is the salmon recovery one, and how long that one can go for. For the ALEA one, since the final funding decision won't be made before April, May, we wouldn't expect to even get a grant agreement from RCO before summertime at some point. So I think we're going to need to make a decision by next summer. I don't think we're going to be able to string it out beyond that.
I see, Miles, you have your hand up. Let me just ask a question on that. Going back to the not financially feasible to accept the grants and then resell at a lower dollar amount, reduced market value. So if we purchased for $2.5 million, was that right?
Right.
And we accept $1.5 million in grants, and then if it appraises at, you're thinking it wouldn't even appraise at $1 million? I would think it would appraise it. Or are we eliminating all residential? Would our sale to the, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, we'd be eliminating the residential unit associated with it. So the property would be appraised as though it was just raw land with no development potential.
Well, isn't that how we would, if we were just outright selling it to the BLM, wouldn't that be the same? Wouldn't we want to eliminate a residential development from the property?
No, there is the existing house on the property. So that's another decision point on many different levels. But I think we would sell it with the understanding that they would have the ability to use that structure. We haven't talked about the idea of some kind of retaining a conservation easement on the property. And I honestly don't know how BLM would react to that idea, whether they're open to it or not.
So I would like to put on a future agenda item. I don't know if it fits next month, but to hash this out a bit more. I have my own opinions about this BL. I don't like it just hanging out there, like just dangling out there. And I would like to wrap it up and make a decision on, I realize we don't have a definite decision on whether they would want to purchase, but I'd like to know, would we consider that, or are we moving forward on this other track? How does everyone feel about that instead of leaving it so squirrelish?
Well, so I mean, this is related to my question, which is, what are the advantages of selling the land to the BLM? It's not just the money that we receive from that sale to help pay for the initial cost. It's also the management is transferred. And I guess I'd want to hear from Amanda because honestly, the BLM management and the monument is pretty spotty. Sometimes there isn't anyone there, and sometimes there's somebody there, but it's pretty small staff. So how much would the BLM in reality, even if they own the property, would they be leaning on the land bank to partner or so I guess I'd be curious for that part of it, the management part of it, how much of an advantage it would be to transfer the ownership to the BLM. Is that something you could talk about, Amanda?
Yeah, a little bit. The current situation with the BLM is that they have been understaffed for the last 2 years, it seems. And so that picture doesn't look good to ask them to take on this very significant project and managing it. In terms of land bank time and staffing, it was also a significant project to take on and something that I didn't really plan for very well in my work plan this year about how much time it was going to take. And part of that is it's a new project, and once we kind of get it sorted out, it will ease somewhat. But then when we're introducing public access, that's a whole nother layer and time commitment. So it's kind of hard to say either way. I think we also got feedback, public comments about the BLM and just kind of the people acknowledging that they haven't really been present staffing wise here recently, and that is kind of a fear that would continue. And so kind of goes both ways.
Is it just a follow up? Sorry, just a follow up.
Yeah.
So there's a comment about the possibility of a caretaker in the house. People were concerned about vandalism, which is pretty rare, but also just monitoring and helping out, manage. I would assume take care of some of the vegetation and other work on the property. Would that caretaker be, if that were to happen, would that be the same whether it was owned by the land bank or the BLM, or would it only be possible under one owner?
No, I think that still stands for the BLM. I think they would also be interested in having a caretaker there, and whether that would probably also maybe support employee housing for them if they went that route, like having their seasonal field assistant live there as a caretaker. So I think that option seemed pretty well received in public comments, and both like with the BLM and for us, it's a new.
Thank you.
Yeah.
David?
Yeah, I kind of agree that we should look hard at this now. If the calculation was between $1.5 million and maybe $2.5 million, I'd go for the $1.5 million, and it's mostly on account of the comments that I've heard about the BLM from people on Lopez. I know that we could probably benefit by getting rid of the management aspect of it, but I think it would be unpopular over there. I'd probably rather hang on to it. So if no new information were available, that would be my choice.
Krista?
I guess I'm not in that big of a hurry related to how the grant, what the grant timeline is, but I think we could move forward and assess the decision to keep it and what that means to the need for additional staff to help boost up what the coverage is over on Lopez. We could work some numbers on what actual stewardship of that piece would look like, so we know what we're committing to ahead of time. We've got time to spend a little review of that. And I find that the grant deadline or the decision being the most pressing, and we've got time to discuss it between now and then. I don't feel compelled to make a decision right now.
So there's something that maybe this is standard for how conservation organizations work, but it feels to me like it's disingenuous to apply for a grant and then later decide, and have people have other projects potentially get turned down in favor of yours, and we don't know. I don't know if we want to keep it or not. That's just a personal comment. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that in order to have all of our options open, but something with it, something about this whole subject is not sitting right with me, and I feel uncomfortable with. I'm with David. I would right now like to shut the door to the BLM option. And retain control of it and come up with ways to manage it, which if we would invest in, and I'm not sure what it would take, but the caretaker position, it feels like if we had a caretaker there, that would alleviate additional, it would be easier, less on Amanda, I guess, if there were eyes on the ground. And it seems like that kind of a property would need that. So anyways, just throwing that out there. Like to hear what other people have to say.
I'll make a quick comment on that. Then I think we should just bring this back. We're not going to make that decision today.
Yeah.
But that wasn't an action item. So if you want to put it on for January or February, sometime in the winter months, I think that's great. And in terms of your feelings, I think, we've benefited from people taking a pass on grants. We've been lower down the list in past projects where we just didn't rise to the same level. But then miraculously people pulled out for whatever reason and we moved up. So I think the money will get to the people that are sitting in line waiting for it. And okay. I don't think, I think this is, disingenuous is a harsh word to me. I think it's being creative and covering all your bases with just leveraging your position. So I think that's what I would rest easy.
Point taken. Point taken.
Yeah, I just jumping in. The grant processes are open processes, so anybody who wants to apply can apply. And the way it works is that they do work their way down the list. They rank. So, if you rank high and you do the project, that's great. There are lots of reasons why people don't go forward with projects. Sometimes they can't come to agreement with the landowner if they're trying to buy a property, or something else falls through, or they don't have the match. And, like when we applied for a farmland protection grant long ago for the Buffum property on Lopez, we were last in that category. It was only because of the harsh economic times and people's inability to make matches that they worked their way down the list to us. So that's
it's standard operating procedure is basically it. Yeah, I knew I didn't have a frame of reference. It was just a general feeling. I didn't know if having these conversations these public conversations reduces our chances of getting the grant. Does word get, no? Okay. Learning. Erin, you had your hand up.
Yes. Well, I just wanted to say, we had 5 comments about the BLM resale. So seems like we have time to be more deliberate about the advantages and disadvantages. And I think, in terms of costs, it goes well beyond the acquisition. We have this old building. We really need to get numbers on that, I think, to understand what we're taking on in perpetuity. And that, where the values are. I think this great discussion, I look forward to having it kind of more organized, where we can point out maybe advantages for the BLM, advantages for us, etc. But I also kind of wanted to bring it back just with my thoughts is that we shared these comments. It sounds like the draft responses are well received by y'all, and we'll follow up with all the commenters next week. And then ideally this plan would be approved at the next commission meeting. So that would be an action item. So if there's anything related to that process, maybe there's a little bit of time left to discuss that. My thoughts.
Okay. Brian, did you put your hand up and take it back down?
No, I guess my hand is up, Sandy. Just in response to your comment, my initial reaction was to say that we've had a number of very, very strong local public responses about the BLM, suggesting that the land bank should hold on to the property. And I take those seriously. And so my initial reaction to your proposal was maybe we should wait to see where the BLM is and basically wait for the rod to come out. But hearing my fellow commissioners' comments, I think we have a lot of issues here and things that are going to take us some time to chew over, particularly the financial and management aspects of this. So I guess in the end, I'm inclined to agree with you that we should put this on the agenda and probably keep it on the agenda while we do what I'll call some strategic planning or maybe contingency planning up to the time of the ROD and the public response to the BLM, so we can see both what the BLM situation and also what the economy is by whatever time that happens, early or mid next year. I think we should kind of keep up to date with it and be ready to make a decision when the time comes.
Okay. That all sounds good. So we have two different things. One is the interim plan, wanting to get that on the approval for November. We're not looking for an approval today. We just approved your comments, or you shared your comments. So we will have that on the November agenda, approving the interim stewardship management plan. And then, yes, it feels like, you know, I have a gut reaction, and some other commissioners might as well, but we really don't have all of we don't have a complete picture to be able to make really an informed decision. So maybe early next year or spring, you know, if staff could work on this caretaker piece. If you're working on assessments on maybe what that would cost to get that up and going, and then prepare pros and cons and scenarios for us, and then bring it back and make it a significant chunk of an agenda time where the public has enough notice that they can participate as well in hearing the pros and the cons. So, yes.
So just one addition here. I do think that as far as BLM is concerned, that public support of their acquisition will be important. So if the record of decision comes out and people are still quite upset with them, and we're not able to generate, 100 letters or whatever to BLM talking about how people are really excited about them purchasing the property, that could easily influence that process. So, that decision may be kind of made for us if people are still upset once that record of decision comes out.
Well, and one of the other things to consider to throw in the mix when we're doing our pros and cons list is the BLM is not a stagnant situation. It's there. What's happening today or what happens next year may change with a new administration, and there's that uncertainty. And so maybe there's a way to partner in some way with still retaining ultimate control. I don't know. Okay, so you'll bring that back to us when it's the appropriate time that we can get this discussed and decided upon. Okay.
Yeah, I think, if we come back to this in January, February, that's probably good.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's see. Outreach and volunteer. Oh, Brian, did you have your hand up again? No, it's up. David, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to raise a topic that's sort of related to stewardship, and it's related to other things, if I could have a few minutes to do it.
Yes, please.
So I got an email from Ron Whalen, who's a neighbor of Zostra Preserve, and he raised a question about the application of lime to the field that Adam Green leases there. And his concern was about whether it was windy and whether the lime was blowing onto his property or other properties. It's not something I know a whole lot about, and I asked and I got an answer from Adam about it. He made it sound like kind of a standard thing that's done, and there were not really issues, and it wasn't really windy. The thing that struck me about it is that we are, in this situation, we're sort of subject to the actions of our lessee in this situation. And it occurred to me that I don't know, like, what rights does he have? Like, what have we conferred upon him by leasing him the property? He can do this and possibly create an issue. I'm not saying that he created an issue. I think that probably he didn't, but it just occurred to me that, wow, this is an exposure that I hadn't really thought about. So I kind of wanted to bring it to the other commissioners' attention, and I got what I believe to be satisfactory response from Doug and Lincoln and from Adam. I haven't responded to Mr. Whalen, but I will. But it occurred to me, wow, here's something that I don't know anything about, and could it be a big deal? Maybe, don't know. That's all I got.
Lincoln, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. I think the application of lime was really in accordance with what our objectives are for those field areas. One of the big concerns has been the fact that they've just been hayed year after year after year, and that's depleted the soil. And so we're well aware that if we don't do something to try and rebuild that soil fertility and health, then it's the quality of the forage that comes off of there is going to be poor and get worse and worse. So it's not like this was sprung upon us and we didn't have any idea that this was going to happen. We're quite supportive of the concept. So, and I think that's always going to be the way it is in these leases. We should review our language and make sure that we don't get taken by surprise at some point.
One of the things that struck me about it is that there's apparently one guy who can put lime on a field in the scale that was needed. He's a mainland operation, and he's hard to get. And I think what he did is he called Adam one day and he said, "Hey man, I'm on the ferry right now. I'm coming to do this." And you don't get a lot of choice about whether it's windy or not. He's just coming to do it. And if you want it, that's how it works. Otherwise it can't get done. So, and from my work, that's a pretty familiar scenario. And sometimes that stuff is really disadvantageous, but It sounds like that's how it went down, and it just made me think, do we have any input into this? Does our lessee get to do it, et cetera?
Well, I'm pretty sure we can say no if the situation isn't looking good. The reality was, as far as I understand it, it was not a terribly windy day. The wind might have been going at 5 knots or something like that. The spreader does throw up a big cloud of dust, and there's no way to avoid that. And some of it did drift over onto Ron's property, but I think it's all, well, his fields will grow better too.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else to say, honestly.
And again, I'm not saying that there's any problem. I'm just reflecting on what struck me as just a thing I'd never thought about. One of those millions of things out there that get you when you're not looking. So just thought I would bring it up.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, hi. So yeah, I'm not concerned about the lime either. I hope one of my neighbors pays to have it done, so it flows over to my fields. Lime's naturally occurring and it gets depleted with overuse. But Dave mentioned, brings up a really good point about what if it was Roundup? What is the kind of control that we have as a lessor to prevent? I mean, we're a non-GMO county, and is there something in the lease agreement? So I agree with you, Lincoln, that I think it would be time to take a look at our strat policies on this and make sure that we get our leases up to date or current.
So we could look at that and bring it back to you just to confirm what our language is.
Well, the Kaufelt agreement that we just discussed doesn't specifically talk about lime, but it does require them to use best management practices according to individual stewardship plan, maintain compliance with all federal blah, blah, blah laws, protecting sensitive habitats. And then it talks about maintaining health soil, that we're holding them responsible for making sure that that is cared for. So we do have some language in there about what their practices are supposed to be. So I don't know whether that has to be tightened up, or if that the language of the best management practices helps to take in things like Roundup. Would that, you'd find that in that document somewhere saying don't use those types of pesticides or herbicides?
Okay. You'll bring it back and confirm that our leases are tidy. Next up is Tanya, Outreach and Volunteer.
Can I offer just one more thing?
I see you under there.
Yes. So I worked with Charlie on setting agricultural goals for Zylstra Preserve in the interim management plan. And this was listed. So this was something that staff recommended. It's listed soil health as a goal in the interim plan, and these amendments were also in the budget that was approved. So I just wanted to offer that we had prepared for this ahead of time. Staff had. Now I'll pass it to Tanya.
You're muted. Oh.
Aaron's causing trouble. Hold on, I gotta write down what time this is when I do the minute. Let's see, I have it here. So coming up, I'd say most importantly is the November 9th Zoom community conversations, the all county. The webpage has been updated, the community conversations webpage, and we'll do it the same as we did in the spring. In the sense that we will have registration and that it'll be a meeting format, meaning that we'll see everybody's faces. should they choose to be seen, or, they don't have to. And we'll start with the introduction. Lincoln will have a brief introduction with acquisitions update, and then open it up for public comment. Does say in the press release that went out this morning, thank you, Erin Wygant, if you're here or not, I don't know. But she sent that out for us. She's our new funneling the media all through her. And folks can send in questions if they won't be able to attend, if they have a specific comment or question ahead of time. And so hopefully we'll have a little bank of those if needed. And does everyone have that on their calendar? Register. I'll be sure I could send you the link so you have an official registration. I'll forward that out today. And a few other things coming up. Amanda's doing bird watching once a month. So for November, it'll be Channel Preserve. And that is, November 4th. November 4th for Channel. And Peter is taking a break. Peter and Andrew will take a break for November at North Shore, and then resume tours once a month for December through March on the second Saturday. So same format, folks can register online, and it'll be 10 a.m. to 11:30 on the second Saturdays through the winter. I'm a little quiet other than that, doing a little research for, the annual report, always thinking about that, and learning about site engine optimization. Yeah. I'm short and sweet today, unless anyone has any questions. And thanks for all the kudos. I thought that the North Shore property, the North Shore Preserve property, we don't have a preserve name yet, but that went really well too. And was so grateful to have blue skies versus today.
And the stewardship report really highlighted all the different events and outreach stewardship related and talks you're giving. So thank you, staff, for doing all those extras.
Yeah, October was busy.
It was.
Wasn't in your work plan either, I bet.
What work plan? Then off to you.
All right, so we're on to future agenda items, retreat timing and topics.
So our first question is, when are we going to have this retreat? And I think we need to make a decision about that. And then we need to discuss some topics or figure out a way to compile a good list of topics prior to it happening. So I'm open to suggestions on timing. This could be our regular December meeting day. It could slip into January also. Up to you all, what you think.
I like having it in December on the 16th because everybody already has that on their calendar. Because December is kind of a crazy month to add another meeting.
I would agree with that. I had a note that our topic that we talked about last time was finance, of getting handle on long-term financial plans. Does that sound? That's what I wrote down here. If so, it would be beneficial to have the existing commissioners, the 3 commissioners currently here, participate in that. Not that we can't have new potential ones also attend and listen in, but for participation, it would be helpful to have long-term commissioners. So I would second having it in December on the meeting date.
I think I'll go with that too. I think when I came on as a commissioner, I didn't have much to contribute the first couple meetings, so it was more of a learning experience, absorbing information and how the system works and what was my role. So I would say having the discussion would be maybe more productive, not necessarily, but it may be more useful to have 3 experienced commissioners present rather than 3, freshmen.
Right. Does that sound, your check with our facilitator, Lincoln, on the timing?
Check. So the next question though is, are we doing this in person?
Brian, you have your hand up. I know he's going to say in person, in person.
Why don't I wait for our answer to Lincoln's question?
Okay. Oh, I thought you were already answering his question.
No.
Okay.
I'd like to do it in person if possible. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
I am gone the months of December and January. It's when I go down to see my family. So, but I'm available by Zoom, and I find it generally pretty useful. If I weren't down there, I think having it in person would be fine at this point.
Well, I know Skog is an in-person vote.
So I would say let's plan it in person.
Yep.
with the backup plan. We don't know what's coming in December.
Right.
Backup plan of making sure that people are comfortable. I mean, the public needs to be comfortable with that too. It's an open, but I guess other county departments are having in-person meetings now, so I didn't know if we had to offer both.
Yes,
we
we do.
We have to offer both.
We're not obligated at this point to have a remote option. We can do an in-person meeting. If we're going to do a meeting like this, we're obligated to have a location that people can go to participate in person. But that doesn't, there's nothing stopping us from figuring out how to provide that remote option. When we can work on that.
I think that's a good idea, particularly if that's the only way that Mike can attend.
Well, and also I think COVID aside, the way the ferries are, it's very possible that we could wake up the morning of a meeting and find out we can't get to the meeting.
Or get
And
home.
so I think we should just routinely have a way for people to participate remotely. Because right now we just don't know. So.
Okay. All right. So it's, well, part of that is, are we asking the facilitator to be in person or not?
I know, assuming John Howell can do it, I know he's got a strong preference for doing it in person. But he'll do it. We've worked around that with him also, if need be. But I would have him lined up to be here in person. Probably we would shoot for doing it at the Grange, which is a pretty big space and convenient to get to. So
yeah.
Does that have the remote option there?
We'll have to look at that.
Okay, Mike? you froze up. Brian?
Yeah, in keeping with your suggestion, Sandy, about the discussing finances, an agenda suggestion or question, which is when are we going to start talking about REIT renewal? Do we want to do it this year or wait till next year's retreat?
Next year.
Well, I'm not having gone through a REIT renewal process, I'm not sure what, and staff not being able to participate in a campaign. I'm not sure what is it that we talk about in the meeting when REIT renewal is coming up. How does
Sorry, what did you say about a campaign?
Well, I don't think staff is permitted to spend any staff time on something related to campaigning for this. Is that right? Am I?
So what we can do and what we as an organization need to be doing is making sure that we've provided enough information to the public so that they know who we are and what we do. So that's a key point. If we're talking about, and by the way, that also includes the ability to do a public survey to gauge public sentiment, and can include that question of reauthorization. So I think there's a lot of things that have to happen before you get into an actual campaign where you're advocating for people to vote on a particular issue. And even now with the roads levy, county staff have remained quite involved in that, in providing information. So they're briefing people. They're, even as the vote, I think the ballots are out now, but they're making presentations and have developed a lot of material around that road levy.
Yeah.
So
I would just add that commissioners can campaign, and I think that that's part of our job. But really, it's all I'm talking about is strategic planning at this point.
So I know that the communications committee, it's been on our radar. We recently mapped out all the community conversations, timelines, and topics leading up to renewal in a logical order. So it seems like conversation might start there in terms of what outreach needs done. And it really isn't outreach about getting us renewed, it's just continued outreach in getting the word out of what we are doing and trying to get more public involvement.
Right. Good.
Question.
Yes.
Can we find out from someone how much detail in terms of just planning the next few months, strategically planning that outreach how much of that can happen on a commission level? Because I think it would be a worthy topic for the retreat, even just a couple hours, if that's allowable, to look at things like who to approach for island representatives, who would be the campaign lead, all those types of just positional, looking at who might possibly help in this process. Is that something that can be done by the commission as a whole and then launched, and they participate in it? But I'm not positive what can actually happen at the commission level, or do we need to reach out? Lincoln needs to reach out to some individual to be the campaign chair, and then the work begins out there and they reach back to interested commissioners. But if we can do something at a commission level to begin, I would really like to do that, but I would like to be assured that that's okay to do.
Yeah, I think if you're going to get into questions of campaign structure, that's really probably over the line, and you'd be better off having someone from outside convene that conversation.
Okay, do we check with Gaylord or somebody just to find out what we could talk about at the retreat level?
Yep, I can do that.
That'd be great.
And I'll send you all an email based on what I find.
Yeah. Because to answer Brian's question, I think we should start at the first of this coming year with developing a plan and getting that kind of structured out during the first quarter, because 2024 is going to be here before we know it, and especially if we're wanting to do this survey. All that stuff takes time.
Okay.
This is Mike. So I've heard there's a range of dates that we could hold, that this referendum could be held. 2024 to 2026 or something like that. When does that decision need to be made, and who makes that decision? And how would that dovetail into this?
It's possible to go out for renewal at any point, really. There's no set time. The idea of doing it, almost all organizations are going to want to do it at least a couple of years ahead of when it's needed, in case something goes wrong in the campaign and they need to try again or whatever. But just purely for planning purposes, it makes sense to be at least 2 years out. So there is no set rule. I think, though, that the renewal committee really needs to be the one to set that date.
The renewal committee being the people outside of the land bank.
Yeah,
not the county council, and not, but basically whoever is ad hoc committee that gets developed would decide when that happens. Wow, that's interesting.
So you're saying would it be an outside group of citizens that get it put on the ballot? Doesn't really quite make sense.
Yes. And that's the timeline. You have to look at, if you want it in November, there's a deadline sometime in April or March for all that to happen. If you want it in April, the deadline is in the fall of the previous year. So that will be one of the things that will determine our timeline. It takes months to get approved to be on the ballot, get your language, get the legal, whatever. That all is months away from the actual election.
There are also two ways to get it on the ballot. One is by collecting enough signatures to do it. I can't remember the number you need, or the county council can put it on the ballot. But that is another decision that this renewal committee will need to make.
Okay. It sounds like it would be good to have some experienced people on the renewal committee that know how these things go down. All right, so aside from that as a potential topic, finding out what we're allowed to talk about and what we can contribute to in a planning within this framework, this idea of finance, and I only wrote it down as one keyword, December retreat finance, and I don't remember if it was related to an overall, what would we be doing for hours with John talking about finance? So it's some strategic, I thought we were going to work on a strategic plan. Is it a strategic We need to use it for strategic planning of some sort is, I think, the best use of the retreat time, unless we have a specific objective.
So last meeting, we had notes under the future agenda, and 3 of them were noted for possible retreat. One was improvement of communication with the county council / budget, the land bank's collective big dream for the overall resiliency of the islands and bioregion, and then I have written here as an added one, retreat renewal committee. So those are the things that must have gotten kicked around last.
So as far as the first one, improvement of communications with county council, I think I've talked with Christine, and we're kind of at the mercy of the council wanting to meet with us or agreeing to meet with us, and we talked about maybe that being part of next year when we have a new council person. And so I'm not sure that that works for our retreat as a retreat item. But I do like the land bank's collective big dream goal, overall resiliency. That will take quite a bit of planning, but maybe if we take into account this, what is this, Parks, Trails, Natural Area, that's not what it's called anymore, whatever the new thing is called. And then I think the Preservation Trust has a strategic plan coming out soon.
Yeah, well, their plan is done. I think their issue is how to release that information and what information they want to release, since it's parcel specific, I'm pretty sure.
I see.
So they're still having that conversation, but it would be great to have some kind of presentation or update from them, either at a commission meeting or at the retreat.
I think in thinking in terms of renewal, that having a strategic plan that takes us through the next 10 years or something like that, that says, here's what all we intend to focus on and accomplish, and having some sort of a work product that lays that out, gives a basis for continuing, what do we intend, if we get renewed, what would we intend to do? So it seems like that might be a good retreat topic.
I think, yeah, and if you're suggesting that, one of the things we should do at the retreat is really discuss what should go into a plan like that and what you all would like to see and think is important. I think that's a great topic.
I have a question as well. When does, I didn't hear Christine mention a date that she thought that the commission or the council would vote on the comp plan. But I think it would be, once the comp plan is finalized, and if that's going to be the next month or two and voted on, it would also be interesting to have someone talk to us about what does the new comp plan mean for our long-term planning, because it's a 10, 20, 30-year plan or something. And it, it may not have changed much. I think it changed quite a bit. And there's a big emphasis on ecology and environment and bike riding and things like that. And all those things should enter into our sort of strategic plan going forward. And I think might also be great information for folks who are considering their vote on the renewal.
So my understanding is that the comp plan is going to be approved this year, and their last meeting is going to be, I don't know, the 13th or 14th of December. So that's when that will happen.
I can't help it. So we could go ahead with the draft that's there, because it's 99% probably completed, and
Well,
use that as sort of our discussion.
If we're doing a retreat, yeah, in December, well, that's what we'd have to do.
Brian?
One of the things that just occurred to me is that the Ross plan, if I'm reading it correctly, talks a lot about trails and cross-country trail connections, which is something that's kind of new for us if I'm understanding that we're talking about trails not necessarily within preserves, but between preserves. And I just wonder more about that, and if we have a plan for if it's our job to do that, if we have a plan to work with local folks, local trail committees to do that. And one of the comments that I made about that to the Ross plan is that for a linear right-of-way connection, you really can't do that on good faith alone. You can't do that without the commitment of the council to be able to exercise eminent domain where necessary. So I'd like to be clearer about if that is in fact going to be the land bank's job and how we're going to move forward to do it.
So first of all, Christine just texted or chatted that the comp plan is due to be approved on the 29th of November. So that we will have that in advance. In terms of the Cross Island trails, there are a number of things going on there. I mean, first I would say we do have some experience with this, mostly through the American Camp Trail, where we worked with the Salmon Island Trails Committee to get people to donate trail easements, and that corridor is largely complete. There are a couple of properties where the owners didn't want to participate, and so the trail kicks back out onto the road, but that trail is there. You can walk from Friday Harbor down to American Camp. One of the other big ones we'll be looking at is the center of San Juan, starting at Katy Mountain and going up to Roach Harbor. So we've been working quite a bit with the old military road trail committee and the Salmon Island Trails Committee on that, and also talking to the intervening landowner about a variety of things. So it's a good question. Our approach has been, if we're going to be involved in getting trail easements, first of all, we want them donated, and that will be what we talk to people about first. We don't have the ability to do eminent domain. That's totally outside of our purview. But if we can get the ball rolling or help direct toward a particular plan, that's all great. You know, ultimately it may come down to the county having to do some eminent domain. I do think that's going to have to be within the right-of-way corridor or next to it.
So I guess, Lincoln, my comment, and this is, again goes to suggestion for the retreat agenda, is do we need to start some kind of planning as to where we begin, how that's going to happen, how we plan trail alignments and which ones. You know, one of my first thoughts is trail from Kaufeld Farm to Turtleback.
Good point.
So just as a matter of record, that's also a topic that was on our future agendas list, was connecting trails on non-land bank properties. I think falls under that. So we've asked to visit that in the past already.
You're muted, Sandy.
Because my dog started growling at somebody. Anybody have anything else to add for our future agenda items for either regular meetings? Maybe also add this, put on our future agenda items list, what we talked about earlier with the Watmau addition, to be, just so we don't overlook that. Add that as a bullet item.
Yep.
And then, so you'll check with John on his availability. We're looking at this. Okay. All right. I feel like we wrapped up. Brian, your hand's up. Is it up or is it not up?
No, we're sorry, it is not.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we will adjourn the meeting exactly on time at 11:10. Yay.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.